Welcome to the Connected Enterprise podcast. This is Carl Lewis, your host from Vision 33. And my guest today is Robert, otherwise known as Bob Markley. And Bob is a professor at St. Vincent's College in Pennsylvania. Bob, tell us a little bit about yourself first, your background, and your work there at the college.
Great, Carl. Thanks for having me. So I'm Bob Markley. I guess since I'm out of college, I should start with my academic background. I have computer science and business degrees from the Pennsylvania State University, and then a master's in business administration from the University of Chicago. When I graduated from the University of Chicago quite a while ago, I started my career with Price Waterhouse. At the time, what was called their mid-market consulting group. So we were focused on medium-size and larger businesses, and that ended up morphing really into an area where we did a lot of work with the Oracle ERP system back in the very, very early days of enterprise resource planning. I worked for about 5 years with Price Waterhouse and really got the bug to be an entrepreneur. So in 1994, I launched an ERP consulting firm in Western Pennsylvania that I owned and grew to around 30 consultants. And then we had a organization that's sold the Oracle ERP system. There were about 10 folks in that group. We ran that. Actually, we got a little scared about the Y2K bug, so we sold that firm in 1999 to a larger systems integrator. Worked there for a couple more years, and then decided to give entrepreneurship another go. And in 2001, launched a second firm called Corporate Solutions. Grew that firm. This one was a little more diverse. We did Oracle, PeopleSoft, JD Edwards, some web development. Grew that firm to similar size, around 30 folks, and exited there in 2004. So since 2004, I've been teaching here at St. Vincent College, which is we always like to say this is the summer home of the Pittsburgh Steelers. They practice here every summer, and so we're used to very good football here on our campus's grounds. And I've been teaching here since 2004. Wanted to bring an enterprise resource planning system into the curriculum. I teach management and accounting information systems. So in 2007, 2008, we joined the SAP University Alliances program, and we were one of two pilot schools here in the United States that started to work with and pilot using SAP Business One in our curriculum.
It's interesting to me, Bob. I mean, been doing it quite a while now, since 2007.
Correct.
And through all that time, I knew there was one other pilot school someplace in California. We won't mention them, but they're not doing it anymore. And I don't know of anybody else that's doing it. Why do you think that is?
That's a great question, Carl. And I've struggled with it too. There are 2,800 schools worldwide that are part of the SAP University Alliances program. The vast majority of those schools work with S/4HANA and other SAP products. There is one or two other schools in Europe that work with Business One, but Business One in the University Alliances has really been more focused on entrepreneurial programs. So I struggle with it because there's generally more interest, more demand in recruiting students out of our program than I'm able to train. So I do wish there were some other schools that would consider and start an SAP Business One program.
Well, tell us a little bit about the students. Since 2007, how many students have gone? Because this is like in addition to their regular classwork.
Correct.
So they opt into this and give it extra time. How many of the students have gone through the program now?
Great question, Carl. So it was initially structured as a program for seniors, but starting in 2011, 2012, we restructured the program, and we recruit students as they're entering their junior year, their third year in undergraduate. So they're generally juniors when they start the program. We've trained 170 juniors who have completed the programs. Started with around 190, but about 170 have gotten through the program. 120 of those have landed full-time summer internships, and roughly 80 have now gone to work somewhere in the SAP ecosystem. So the way it happens is they start the training in July of their junior year as they're entering their junior year, and the training runs for roughly 6 months. Now understand, on top of this class, most students generally have 4 to 6 other classes that they're participating in during the fall semester. So, it really is only a class that can take, say, eight hours or so of their week, because they are full-time students.
Right. And, I've noticed in the program, you do various things. They get to visit various places of work, places that are running SAP software typically, and attend some meetings at SAP offices, and just sort of get a general flavor for, what's the business like? How important is that stuff for them?
Tremendously. What I struggle with more than training them on the software is training them on the business processes. I've had numerous students in my office, especially early in the training, like in the first maybe month or two of the training, not understanding what a sales order is, not understanding what a purchase order is, and what impact a sales order or a purchase order would have on a business. So trying to introduce them and show them and walk them through some of these business processes, being able to see the business processes, visualize the business processes, really helps. So we visit, typically almost every year we visit it's a light manufacturing business that shows them how they get their orders, turn those orders into production orders, issue purchase orders, and eventually deliver and bill the customer.
And do they still basically get a certification in SAP Business One?
So this program trains them on the same certification that a Vision 33 or any other implementation consultant would be trained on. The certification is up for them to take. Most of them typically during their senior year or just after they start working for the SAP Business One partner, typically sit for and pass the certification exam. We don't require that as part of the program. There's a fairly large cost involved in the certification exam. So we train them for it. We prepare them for it. We actually have a final exam that they take that really mimics the certification exam. And again, I've had a lot of feedback, because probably around 50 of the students have passed the certification exam. And they've helped me to understand what are the questions on the certification exam, and how can we design our practice exam to mimic that.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. This is a rather innovative thing in education. I'm sure that out there someplace in the world of education, there are others who have similar programs where they're trying to place students and that sort of a thing. But it's nothing like when I went to college. So, it was kind of like get your degree and, you're on your own to try to find a place. Do you see education in general changing, to be more like this, to have more places where students get this kind of, I wouldn't say just education and awareness, but almost like an indoctrination, into the life of business? Because that's one of the things that's hardest about hiring a graduate is there's no experience.
Yeah. The United States has fewer students graduating from high school right now than we've had in the past. And again, we're in the eastern part of the country. We're even being more impacted by that, as there are just fewer students every year graduating from high school. So schools, colleges are having to get more competitive, figure out more innovative ways to attract, retain, and what nothing helps more than knowing that you're likely going to have a good outcome around a good career, a good job upon graduation. And one of the things that I've sort of changed over the last couple of years is I help the students understand that what this really opens up the door for them, gives them the opportunity to get into the technology field. And we just happened to be down at SAP's Pittsburgh office yesterday, and it's a beautiful office, lots of perks for people that are working in that office, great location. And I think sort of helping the students to understand those benefits also helps to tend to attract them, keep them engaged, keep them interested, working hard to try to complete the program.
Yeah.
You had mentioned also, Carl, and this may be a good time to throw in. So one of the other things that we're doing that we're just building right now, we're just about to prototype it, is we've started what's called an operational excellence lab. It's a lab where our students have the opportunity to it's mostly oriented towards a light manufacturer. Look at a manufacturing environment where they can look at ways to improve the overall processes for that manufacturer. And one of the things I've been able to introduce is we've now incorporated SAP Business One into that, so they can see how a demand, a sales order, or a forecast will then, when you can run the MRP process, and how it will generate production orders and purchase orders directly out of the system, and what impact those would have on inventory, what impact those would have on the production process. So, the more areas that I can find to help the students not just understand the software, but also to understand the business processes. And production is one of those hard ones, because most manufacturers don't want students wandering through their manufacturing process. So,
right.
This is a way here on our campus we've been able to introduce that.
And those that get internships with the Business One partners, I mean, they're for a summer typically.
Correct.
I take it,
Correct.
And so over a roughly 2-month period of time.
10 to 12 weeks is what most of the
weeks.
Internships last. Now, the good news is a lot of the partners now continue to have the students stay on part-time during their senior year. So if they're able to work them into a project, support role, some of them go the marketing or sales routes, and they try to keep them engaged throughout the remainder of their senior year. It's a great way to, obviously retain them and then be able to hire them full-time once they graduate.
Yeah. And I would imagine those 10 to 12 weeks are also really important, and just sort of more of a hands-on experience, a little bit more into the weeds than
Yes.
you might get into in a classroom experience. So,
and all the partners' experiences are different. A lot of them have now been able to work them, into like a junior consulting role on a project. Have them help with the blueprinting, have them help with the configuration, data conversion. Others sometimes work them more into support roles where they're handling tickets. They're doing some of the light training of new users. And then again, about 5 years ago, I started recruiting some marketing students into the program also. And so that, those students are typically get more involved in social media, working with the partners around their marketing programs, their sales programs. So we really run kind of the gamut of a consulting type of organization.
Yeah. It's interesting because, I obviously, work kind of under our marketing umbrella, and I would say I'm the unusual one who's actually had my hands on the software.
Right. Very true.
Most of our marketing people don't have that experience, right? So they've never really worked any of the processes. So that would be a huge plus.
A funny story there, Carl. One of my students who interned during her junior year for one of the partners, they were trying to prepare some marketing materials. They needed some screenshots. They had no idea how to log into the software and navigate to the the sales order, the purchase order screen. So she did it all for them, and she said like her coworkers were just amazed by that she knew so well how to navigate the software.
Yeah, it could be a great bonus for sure. So you've been at the school since, you said 2004, something like that?
2004, yep. Yeah. 18 years.
Well, in our last kind of 10 minutes here, maybe a little less, how have you seen education change over that period of time?
So that's a great question. I think on a positive side that I would say I really see the students, they're much more technology engaged than they were, when I started teaching here. I mean, social media, texting, emailing, they're all very comfortable with technology. So in my management information systems class, the class that all the business students take typically during their sophomore year, that's when I introduce SAP Business One to them. And we're running the OEC computers, the demo system, and I give them about 10 minutes of training, and they're very quickly able to come up and start using the system. And I really don't tell them a lot about how to navigate. They can figure it out on their own. They're very comfortable with a lot of that technology. Now, where I do see that education has sort of changed a little bit is most of them are not yet that comfortable with Excel, which surprises me. I don't think high schools, at least from the student groups that we're recruiting from, are introducing their students or having their high school students work as much with Excel. So I'm having to spend more time on some of the basics of Excel. They're more comfortable in Business One, quite honestly, than they are working in Excel. The pandemic here, the last 2 or 3 years, has been very hard on students coming out of high school. But one of the things that all of the faculty have been frustrated by is that a lot of the basics around study skills, around note taking, around getting ready for an exam has to be retaught. And a lot of the students don't have or have been away for a number of years from having to reinforce those skills. And so we've definitely seen that change. Another thing I think that's impacting higher education is St. Vincent College is one of these schools. A lot of schools now do not require the ACTs or the SAT scores for their students. So placing a student into the correct math course, into the correct English course is a bit more challenging. And again, MIS course is a kind of an overview course where they do some writing, they do some tech work, they have to do some basic math work. And I'm seeing some students that some that are excelling at that, some that are struggling much more with that. So I do think going away from the SATs and ACTs has made it more challenging, really, to kind of evaluate the skill set of the students that are coming in from high school.
Understandable, and I can certainly see how the pandemic would have really impacted juniors and seniors, the last high school students over the last few years, because you really kind of refine those skills as you get older in school.
Yeah, right.
And if you're not there and everything's virtual, that changes a lot.
Exactly.
Sure.
I think, go ahead.
I was going to say, I certainly watched my grandson struggle with that environment. He was much younger, but still very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that even a lot of the socialization side of being on projects, we're having to work together. A lot of them were used to, doing that virtually, doing that over Zoom, doing that over, some learning environments. Now they're having to do it back in person. Has been, a bit of a challenge, or just something different that they're having to relearn some of those skills.
Yeah, for sure. So what about the future? Do you see other changes happening, with education in the future, and what even your program, may morph to down the road?
As I mentioned earlier, there's more demand for my students than I'm really able to train. We have 20 students in the program this year, which is about the maximum capacity that we can train, just based on the facilities, based on the one-on-one time you need with the students. Some years I could probably place 25, maybe even 30 in internships, because we mostly work with the value-added resellers. There's customers coming to us that are looking for, maybe someone who could be, on their staff, who could support their SAP Business One environment. And, I think some customers have hired, but again, a lot of times all the students are gone just to the value-added resellers before we have an opportunity with the customers. One of the points you asked earlier, Carl, I think higher education is seeing that to stay competitive, schools need to offer, they really are selling to the incoming seniors in high school and their parents, and they're having to offer programs that can help these high school students eventually end up in a good career field. So, I do think programs like mine, programs that are not just academic programs, but also career focused are going to become more popular, are going to grow in numbers in schools.
We've always kind of done that with certain professions, like let's say physicians, for instance, right?
Right.
There's always been the classroom work, and then there's the residency, right? That happens, and I wonder if that's not part of what we're aiming for in the future.
Yep.
So that then the student really comes on board and it very quickly ramps up and is able to make a contribution in a business. And so I think, the program you've created has certainly been a great model. And I can say without hesitation that, they're very welcome in the Business One community.
Yes.
And the school has a great reputation, because of that contribution. So keep up the good work, my friend.
Well, thank you. I penned an article actually for ASUG a few months ago, late summer. And, I did hear back from some professors most professors who were very supportive of it. There are some that still are kind of pushing back, feeling that higher education is different than career preparation. And, and I do see that there's a role for both. But I think, again, that most of our customers, the students and their parents, are wanting their son and daughter to be prepared and be able to move into a good paying career, just if nothing else, to be able to afford the cost of the higher education.
Well, and I noticed that for many of them, the vast majority of them are from Pennsylvania, right?
True. Yes.
And it's Latrobe, right? Is the town?
Correct. That's correct.
I always remember it as Arnold Palmer's hometown.
Yeah.
Not the Pittsburgh Steelers, but that's okay.
Mr. Rogers is from here also.
Oh my goodness. And
Yes.
and then they get jobs all over the country. Right?
Correct.
So it's quite an adventure for many of them also. And even the internship process, they go all over the country. So
Yes.
I think, it's just, if I was a student, I would absolutely adore that. Right.
Thank you.
It's just a great program. So Bob, thanks for joining us today, giving us an update on the St. Vincent's and the students and what's happening and where we're going. So
Thank you, Carl.
We'll be watching for the program to keep growing as it has these many years. So thanks, my friend. And
Thank you.
For everyone out there, until we meet again, stay connected.